The car brand we all know and love made a lot of really great and cool, unique, futuristic concept cars over the year, and they also made some that, well, could have used some improvement. Today, I'm going to go over some of the more popular concept cars that they created, 6 of them in fact, and going to be ranking them from worst all the way down to best. I do want to mention that this is only concept cars, so this won't include something like the next generation Saab 9-3 that was planned. That wasn't really a concept car, that was much more of like, here's what we're coming out with next. But with that aside, let's go ahead and get into it. Number 6, and in my opinion, probably by far the worst concept car Saab ever made, is the Saab 96X. The 96X was particularly hideous and kind of a bit odd looking in all honesty. It was heavily based on the B9 Subaru Tribeca, which was an ugly vehicle in its own right. This was intended to build off the relationship between Saab and Subaru that began with the awesome 92X that was in production for 2005 and 2006. The prototype was, however, canceled in 2005, and some of the body panels from the 96X, from what I read, were actually used on later facelift B9 Subaru Tribecas, which is kind of cool. I'm sure that most of us, though, in reality are okay with the 96X not really coming to fruition. If you do want to see a more detailed video on that car, however, feel free to click up in the top corner. I can't say the same with the next car and pretty much all the other cars on this list because they are all pretty awesome in their own right. Number 5 is the Saab 9-X BioHybrid. The 9X BioHybrid debuted at the Geneva Auto Show in 2008 and was based off the GM Delta platform. So you might be wondering what that is. That essentially means it was based off of a Chevy Cruze or a Saturn Ion. So the bar was obviously very low from the start, but Saab actually turned that platform into something pretty awesome and unique with this concept. Like I said, this 4-seater was far from a Chevy Cruze, however, as it contained an E85 capable turbocharged motor with around 200 horsepower, and it also had a small GM base hybrid system that provided an additional 19 horsepower. All of that was mated to a 6-speed manual transmission. And all this in combination kind of allowed the car to achieve about 37 or so miles per gallon, which is pretty solid. At the time, it included a handful of kind of futuristic features. Keyless entry is one of them that was starting to become common around that time, but it also had cameras for the side and rear view mirrors. That's something that we are just kind of starting to see now on some higher end cars that Saab put in their concept car back then. But I think the coolest feature this car had was a special diffuser that would deploy over certain speeds for additional stability, but it also had an air brake or rear spoiler that would kind of pop up and function when braking under higher speeds. The 4th best Saab concept made, in my opinion, was the Saab Phoenix. That's Phoenix with a capital X at the end. You'll notice a lot of these cars, in fact, I think all of them except for one have X in them. The Phoenix was one of Saab's last production cars. It debuted in 2011, shortly before the company went under. Similar to the 9X BioHybrid, the Phoenix was also a hybrid, but this time 4-wheel drive. It had a BMW turbo 4-cylinder powering the front wheels with about 200 horsepower and a 37 horsepower electric motor powering the rear wheels. It is my understanding that part of the reason why they created this concept was to kind of show off the powertrain that was going to be in the next generation 9-3 that was supposed to come shortly after the company got shut down. It was designed as a 2-door 4-seater and it had some pretty interesting styling cues. For one, the car featured an extended wing of sorts that went along the top of the car on either sides. Definitely unique. I can't recall another car that has done something like that. Going off of that, I do think the front and side profiles of the Phoenix were absolutely beautiful, but I could not get over the rear end and how hideous it was. And in my opinion, it reminds me exactly of an early 2000s Pontiac Firebird, which is in no way a compliment. 3rd best concept Saab ever made is by far the oldest one on this list and the only one that doesn't have an X in the name. That is the EV1, which I recently did a video on. You can check out my video on the EV1 in the top corner up here, but the EV1 was not an EV, as you might think. It actually stood for Experimental Vehicle. It debuted in 1985 and did not have any EV powertrain or hybrid, but it was rather heavily based on the 900 Turbo of the time. It had 282 horsepower all to the front wheels, which was almost double that of the 900 turbo. The body was also partially made of carbon fiber, which for the 80s, that was super futuristic and really cool. It also borrowed some design cues from the 900, such as the grille, the 3-spoke wheels, the gray trim around the bottom, the night panel feature, etc. Well, here we are, down to the top 2 Saab concepts ever created. Let's go ahead, start with number 2, which is the Saab 9X. This is not to be confused with the 9X BioHybrid, which I just talked about, but it almost seems as if this concept was sort of the predecessor to that car in some ways, but this earlier version of the 9X had a whole lot more under the skin and capabilities than the newer BioHybrid. It debuted in 2001 and had a turbocharged V6 with 300 horsepower, all-wheel drive, and a 6-speed manual transmission. And honestly, while I prefer the look of the 9X BioHybrid, I think the 9X just looks sort of goofy and also kind of cool and like typical concept car kind of look. To think it had 300 horsepower over 20 years ago, which is still more than most hot hatches come with today, is pretty crazy and cool. That's still not even the best part about this. It did have some cool, sort of futuristic features. It had fiber optic headlights, keyless entry, and it had 2 removable body panels in the rear of the car that sort of converted it into a small pickup truck. During their marketing reveal of this car, Saab touted this as being 4-dimensional. It was a coupe, it was a roadster, it was a wagon, and it was a pickup truck all in one. Saab had actually planned to roll this car out for production somewhat after this, basically in the same form that it was conceptualized as, but unfortunately, as we all know, that never happened. And that brings us to the best Saab concept ever made, which is the Saab Aero X. I think the Aero X sits atop many of our lists as the best Saab concept car ever created. It debuted in 2006 and it was sort of the closest thing that Saab created to a supercar. It had a twin-turbo V6 that created 400 horsepower and was mated to a 7-speed automated manual transmission, putting the car to 60 miles an hour in under 5 seconds. Outside of the timeless and beautiful all-around styling and the huge turbine wheels that it had, it also featured a wraparound windshield, I guess you could call it, that opened simultaneously with the roof to allow occupants to get out. It was almost like the whole roof and windshield area was just like a giant clamshell that kind of opened up. Saab also wanted to introduce some futuristic technology in this thing. It had no buttons or knobs, but it had what they sort of called information displayed in 3D and on clear zones in the car, which I assume were like glass panels or some sort of futuristic screen that displayed all sort of driver information. So what do you guys think? What is your favorite Saab concept car? Is it one of these 6, or is it perhaps one that I didn't mention in this video, one of the more lesser known cars? Either way, comment down below. Let me know what you guys think. I'll have more content coming on the 900 and my other cars here soon. I've been doing a lot of 900 content recently, so I wanted to break it up with something different for a week. If you want to see the full detailed videos of each of these concept cars, click the cards in the top right corner to get a direct link to those videos, or just search them in YouTube. My video should probably be the first one that comes up. But thank you guys all so much for your continued support. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed, and I'll see y'all next time.